a resource or as a roadblock. The task for both religious and secular leadership is twofold. First is to recognize that religious beliefs, texts, and teachings can serve both as a roadblock and as a resources for victims of to access the resources of both community-based advocacy and shelter and faith-based support and counsel. For her to do so, she needs these two resources to work collaboratively so that they can provide consistent advocacy and support for victims and survivors and participate in the process of holding perpetrators accountable. So now Islam as a roadblock and a resource. Within Islam, we find texts and interpretations of texts that have been used by abusive men to justify, have been used, many of them, I mean, many men use these texts, to justify their behavior. Like peacefulfamilies.org. The most abused verse in the, Virgin Ma'idah, is verse 34. Men are the maintainers of women because Allah has made some of them to excel others, and because they spend out of their property the good men. Then if they obey you, do not seek a way against them. Surely Allah, means God, is high, great. Al-Khatib explains that this passage, that the men, Muslim men should financially and physically protect women, given their, their physical strength, greater physical strength, and instruct Muslim women to guard their fidelity and obedience to Allah. In the wrong way, some translators assert that based on the Prophet's lifelong abhorrence of the teachings of the Prophet, when he really is against violence against women. In addition, emphasizes the woman's obedience to Allah's desire and not to those of another human being, but those who misinterpret this verse with assignment, control, and abuse, completely opposed to the Islamic foundation of marriage and family. One of mutual kindness and mercy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in chapter 30, verse 21. One of his signs is that he created mates for you from yourself, that you may find rest in them, and he puts between you love and compassion. Most surely there are signs in this for a people in which they can specify their expectation of fair treatment. No human being has ultimate control of the religion. In Christianity, still we find these, we can find these findings and misinterpretations. Both in Hebrew Bible and Christian scriptures, there are story after story of violence. The rule of marriage, compiled in the 15th century, we find the careful instruction to a husband to first reprimand education for women remaining in abusive relationships like subordination in a marriage or prohibition of divorce is a common ploy by those who seek to simply justify their actions. It is not difficult to prove text, a privilege, or is never God's will, but rather fullness of life. Jesus understood his ministry to proclaim release to the captives. He told the story of Good Samaritan to emphasize our responsibility to stop has saved an entire world. Judaism serves as a resource for women who have experienced abuse when Pikuach Nefesh is taught and remembered to be a sacred obligation, taking precedence over Shalom Bait, particularly when the home is not a place of peace, but rather a place in which violence is being perpetrated. So the core value for Christianity, Judaism, and Islam is the preservation of a marriage and the family. However, underlying purpose behind the application of texts and teachings on marriage and family often has been the preservation of male control of women and children. At times, this has come at the expense of women's safety. Thus, we have seen centuries of religion in service to patriarchy rather than serving as a challenge to dominate social norms which have perpetuated violence against women. So still we have to be positive and we need to celebrate the narratives. Persistent sources exist within our various traditions, which when explored and give voice, offer powerful resources for strength and courage, as well as compassion and justice for those who have been harmed by the acts of another in the community. In Islam, there are texts that should challenge the community to support battered women. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, says in Surah chapter 4, verse 148, لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم وكان الله سميعا عليما. The verse says, Allah does not love the public utterness of hurtful speech unless it be by one to whom injustice has been done, and Allah is hearing, knowing. Is a clear permission to speak openly about injustice on any issue, including marital abuse. Resources such as these from Christianity, Judaism, Islam,